issued. Permit will be issued, and then they'll start building it. If the contested case hearing is granted, then it'll be kind of like a I don't know, like a lawsuit sort of, but not really. And that can produce a lot of high quality information, and it would delay the building of the plant by about half a year to a year. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you for the update. And this meeting that Jason was talking about, it's on Thursday, the 13th at I don't remember, 9 or 9:30. And you can attend in person or online. In person at the Workforce Commission in Austin, and online there's a link provided. In chat, you can find the link with the agenda. And what I don't personally get here is that, as Jason said, the decision will be made on Inner Harbor, whether it's going to be like request for reconsiderations will be granted or contested case hearings. And that's item 4 on the agenda. Public testimony, which would be relevant to the Inner Harbor desal plant, is item 29. So I don't know how it works in the TCQ world as far as that, because to me it sounds like public testimony is way past the decision, once decision made. So I encourage you to attend though, and be in the loop, express your opposition as well. Some relevant developments, and thank you for the update, Jason. Some of the developments that happened relevant to water at the legislature. We still haven't seen Perry's big water bill, the bill that would fund infrastructure for water transfer across the state and new water supply options such as seawater desalination that we'll talk about today, and treatment of produced water for beneficial reuse. So we have not seen that bill yet. But the House, I didn't reflect it here. There was a bill in the House that is related to water funding. I will have to get back to you with that information. But Perry hasn't filed. The word on the street was that he would file it today. We haven't seen it yet. But constitutional amendments for funding for Texas Water Fund were filed last week by the House and Senate. And in the Senate, of course, it's Charles Perry who carried the Senate Joint Resolution 66, and in the House is Cody Harris. House Joint Resolution 7. It's not HR. Again, typo. I'm sorry. So looking at those two, I did the side-by-side comparison. Just going to take a look at my notes here. Both of those constitutional amendments are aimed to establish a consistent stream of funds to Texas Water Fund. The Senate version is complicated compared to the House version. We like the House version more. The Charles Perry essentially says that 80% of funds that go to Texas Water Fund should be appropriated to new water supplies projects, such as produced water and seawater desalination. And so 80% should be appropriated before 2043 on the yearly basis. And then after 2043, the legislature can decide how much goes where. Basically, there's no requirement to appropriate 80% for new water supply projects. And then his amendment doesn't specify 1 billion investment cap per year for the Texas Water Fund, but it's worded in such a way that the amount of investments can reach 1 billion per year. And then the House version is, as I said, simpler. It doesn't specify how exactly the funds should be spent, because we are concerned about 80% of the Texas Water Fund money going to new water supply projects. There's a lot to be concerned about. We'll hear about desal today, and we heard about produced water in the past. So, and so the House version also specifies 1 billion cap, the 1 billion cap per year. However, the legislature can decide whether they, based on the fiscal needs, can reduce it, but they cannot reduce it by more than 50%. So, in general, as I said, the House version is cleaner. We like it more. We support the House version. Then another bill that is important for today's topic is HB 3728, was filed by Morales Shaw. We worked with that office on filing this bill, and it would require TCEQ to set salinity standards for basin estuaries. It's an issue that we are moving into seawater desalination. I mean, large scale seawater desalination without standards in place. So that's a concern. A great bill and awesome job getting it filed. HB 1501 is another bill, and it focuses mostly on studying seawater desalination in Texas, and just directs the Meadows Center to study the feasibility of seawater desalination in Texas. So these were all my updates for now. And hold on. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, but at this point, let's move to our wonderful guests today. Alida Castillo is Chispa, Texas, and I believe Jason will be speaker as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen to let Alida share hers.
Present mode. Hi, everybody. Good evening. How are you? So today we're going to be talking about desalination, which is the hot topic, as Evangelist mentioned, in this state of Texas. So it is seawater desalination and our impacts on coastal communities. So what is desalination? Sorry, let me move this out of the way. It removes salt from ocean water. Or what is seawater desalination? It removes salt from ocean water. It produces potable water. There are currently no large-scale seawater desalination plants in Texas, and there are 5 proposed desalination plants proposed in the coastal bend. And here in this picture, you will see one that is a currently fully permitted, built-out desalination plant for CC Polymers in Corpus Christi. And that was something that was, that is one of those projects that's in consideration. So you may ask, like, why are we talking about Hillcrest? So all eyes are on Hillcrest, which is the Hillcrest, aka Inner Harbor Desalination Plant. This is located in the Corpus Christi ship channel, which is in this area right here. Hillcrest is also the only remaining historic Black and Brown neighborhood in the city of Corpus Christi, which is located right here. And the desalination plant. These are, the intake for the desal plant is here and discharge is right here. So pretty close to each other. And right here is where the Hillcrest neighborhood is located. As you will see, and as I mentioned, this is in the Corpus Christi ship channel. So this is where the port conducts the majority of its business for Refinery Row. So this lovely, body of water here gets exposed to all of the pollutants and discharge, treated water discharge from Refinery Row, all the facilities on Refinery Row. Here, this is near the local Citgo or Flint Hills refinery. That was also a leak there. There was a methanol leak in the water a few years ago. And then here is, there's piles of petroleum coke, which are on the other side of the ship channel. And, coincidentally, like this is where fighting against petroleum coke energy center is where I met Dave for the first time when we were fighting against Las Visas here in Corpus Christi. So this all blows into the same area that they are proposing to build the Inner Harbor Desalination Plant. So the reason why I bring up Hillcrest a lot is because Hillcrest is currently fighting the impacts of environmental racism that the city of Corpus Christi continues to, impact the community with. So Hillcrest was actually, the residents were redlined to only live in the Washington Coles neighborhood, which was on the other side of Hillcrest. Hillcrest used to be predominantly white. It was wealthy. It was where all the nice golf courses were until industry started moving in because of their proximity to water along the ship channel. So then black residents were allowed to move to Hillcrest so that the refinery workers could live close to work. And so that's when it began in the 1940s is when it began to shift from predominantly white to black. Then you saw the decline of the neighborhood. Interstate 37 was built. There was there's been a few explosions in the Hillcrest area, especially in the 80s and 90s, where it created a buffer zone. And this buffer zone is going to be big to, a big talking point of this project. And then there was a new harbor bridge that was built. TxDOT thought that we needed to replace our existing bridge. And the port got involved, saying, yes, we need a larger bridge to allow bigger tankers so that they could export more crude oil from the Corpus Christi ship channel. So now there was a bridge project that is in the works. It's almost close to completion after several years, overdue. And this was another project that cut Hillcrest off from Corpus Christi. So this is a home. Hillcrest is definitely a frontline community. Here you will see a community that's impacted by higher rates of asthma, cancer, birth defects, every chronic disease that you could think of, like residents in Hillcrest have been impacted by. They are also exposed to a lower life expectancy of 15 years compared to other people in Nueces County. The city of Corpus Christi has been doing its part to reduce services to Hillcrest. Residents feel isolated and, as I mentioned, Hillcrest is where the desalination plant will be built, and this will be the third Title VI lawsuit, civil rights lawsuit, that the Hillcrest residents will file against the city of Corpus Christi. So, the city is moving forward with the infrastructure for desal, including a substation, despite not, getting the support of the community. So in 2022, Hillcrest filed a civil rights lawsuit, a complaint of the Civil Rights Act against the city of Corpus Christi, with the EPA, HUD, and Department of Justice. EPA decided not to get involved, did not contest it. HUD also referred it over to the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice decided to close the case. Then in October 2024, HUD decided that it was closing its case. And then a few days later, it decided it was going to reopen it. But now we're hearing that they may be closing the case again because of this push for desalination. So here are some quotes from community members. Pastor Carrington, we lost in 2023. And, it's like the city of Corpus Christi has proven over and over again that it values profits over Hillcrest residents' health and the quality of life. From Reverend Williams, just believing that the city of Corpus Christi is destructive to both the Hillcrest neighborhood and Corpus Christi neighboring life if they build this desalination plant. And the former port CEO, Sean Strawbridge, had this to say about Hillcrest. It's unfortunate that not all neighborhoods in this country survive and continue to thrive or are eligible for gentrification opportunities. Hillcrest, unfortunately, is one such neighborhood. So they have all looked at Hillcrest as a place that they could live at.
And now you want to put a desalination plant in a spot that's supposed to be a buffer zone to save us from the refineries.
So this was a conversation that Pastor Carrington was having when we had former EPA Region 6 Administrator Arthea Nance come down to the area to find out what exactly was happening in Corpus Christi because of the fights against Hillcrest, the Hillcrest desal plant, the fights against the industrial expansion, and everything else that the coastal bend has been experiencing. So why Hillcrest? Why the push for desal, especially here? Because the city of Corpus Christi is in a bind. We are under drought 3 restrictions, water restrictions. We have been under that for almost a year now. We were under drought 2, stage 2 restrictions since 2022. And 2024, we went to stage 3, and we will be in stage 4 by May or June of 2025, which the city does not want because that means all of the industry partners will have to reduce their operations. So that is what they are trying to avoid. And that is why we are in this conversation of desalination in Corpus Christi and along the Texas coast, because it's all about providing water for our industrial partners. I use partners very lightly. So as we know, state and federal agencies, TCEQ is a rubber stamper. The EPA did not object to TCEQ's issuing the discharge permit, which is currently what's being contested, and HUD reopened the case in October. So why are we so focused on Hillcrest? Because the project is furthest along. The city of Corpus Christi has received a total of $760 million in low interest loans from the Texas Water Development Board. The original price tag they told us was about 140, then it went up to 220. Then it was like, oh, we need to get more money. So they got a $535 million low interest loan from the TWB. So we know that this project isn't going to be less than $1 billion. It's going to be almost 1.5 billion for this project alone. And the city has already selected Kiewit to construct the plant, and TCEQ approved the water intake permit in 2022 for 20 million gallons of water per day in phase 1 and 30 million gallons of water per day in phase 2. And as was mentioned earlier on the call, the draft discharge permit was granted in 2023, but it's the permit is being contested. And Hillcrest wants this. This location is the worst location for a desalination plant, but it is most accessible to industry. So the city of Corpus Christi bought a parcel of land from Flint Hills for $5 million. And that is what, is moving a lot of this. Part of, this whole thing, like industry got involved in a lawsuit. I mean, not a lawsuit. They got involved in the electoral races back in November because they needed to get people in there who were going to be supporting all of the desal projects, and because they needed the water. So why are we in this bind as a state? Because we have the Texas, quote unquote, miracle, the water mismanagement cycle. So what do we do as a state, or, in our communities? We build a new water supply, we sell all of the water, we run out of water, and then it goes round and round and round again. And at this point, I will pass it over to Jason.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thanks, Alita. So I'm just going to cover a few ins and outs of desalination in general. So the desalination process, like Alita said earlier, produces potable water from seawater. You're just desalting it, basically. It's a 5-step process. So you take in the water, you remove the solids, you filter it, you remove the salt, and then you discharge. When you remove the solids, you create a solid waste stream. Creates a lot of noise because they have to like centrifuge it, and it creates releases emissions. Like Leah said, it's kind of like the Inner Harbor is like the trash can for Refinery Row, right? So who knows what kind of stuff is going to be coming out of that waste stream. But the main streams that we're focused with for the environmental impacts are intake and discharge. So moving on to the next slide, the environmental risks of desalination. First one is intake. You're taking in a lot of water, and if you don't filter out what you're taking in, you're going to take in fish and fish larvae. So normally they have about 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter screens that screens out large organisms, but it still traps wildlife and can reduce the amount of fish larvae that's in the water. The main environmental risk that we're focused on right now is the discharge. So when you're desalinating water, half of the water that you take in, you don't desalinate. Instead, that water carries out the salt that was removed from the desalinated water. So the wastewater outfall is twice as salty as the intake water. And so that heavy brine is super salty, and it can increase the salinity in the nearby area or further. And it can also reduce the amount of dissolved oxygen nearby or further. The way it reduces dissolved oxygen is because the salt is, the brine is extra salty, so it's heavier than seawater, right? So it sinks and it settles at the bottom of the seafloor, and doesn't like to mix with the water around it. It prevents oxygen from the surface reaching the seafloor. And as it travels over respirating organisms, it eventually gets depleted of oxygen and becomes hypoxic. And if it lasts long enough, it forms dead zones. And that's something we're really concerned about in the Inner Harbor right now. So moving on to the next slide, what's the difference between discharging offshore and inshore? The one thing about Texas that makes it special and different from other areas is that we have barrier islands. You don't really see that on a lot of coasts. What's cool about barrier islands is that it creates really good habitats for wildlife, especially aquatic organisms. About 95% of commercially important and recreationally important species use the estuaries at some point in their life cycle. And you may have heard of nursery habitats. And estuaries are nursery habitats for juvenile fish. The problem with that is that juvenile fish are more sensitive to increases in salinity, and that can result in them not being able to grow as big as they would have otherwise, or they could die prematurely because of the heightened salinity. So the main difference between offshore and inshore is that offshore is able to disperse the wastewater from desalination quickly, and inshore doesn't have that ability because the barrier islands are blocking the water that would be mixing and flushing out the desalination wastewater. And so people prefer inshore because it's cheaper. You don't have to build a 20-mile pipeline to go offshore, but it's also harder to flush out those waste loads and can kind of diminish the health of our base. I like to think of it like barbecuing outside versus inside your house. You know, would you barbecue inside your house for like a family cookout? No, right? So it's kind of the same thing. All right, so moving on to the next slide, seawater desalination in the coastal bend. Like Alita said earlier, we have 5 proposed plants in the Corpus Christi Bay system. 4 of them are inshore and 1 of them are offshore. One's already permitted. And there's 3 with partial permits. It's the Inner Harbor, it's the La Quinta, and the Harbor Island. So if all of those were built, that would be like 130 million gallons a day being discharged into our bay system or more. And that's like 4 Inner Harbor plants, a lot of water. So moving on to the next slide, impacts on coastal communities. The first impact is higher water bills. I think for the Inner Harbor plant, it's gonna raise bills by like $120 a year for an average user. We're gonna have saltier bays and estuaries. We're gonna have hypoxia or dead zones, less wildlife, less recreation, and we're gonna have industrial expansion because, well, at least for Corpus. In Corpus, the Inner Harbor plant alone is enough water to double the population of Corpus Christi. So we grow about 1% a year, and so does the coastal bend. So most of that water is going to go to industries, and they're also going to have an environmental impact. Okay, my last slide is permitting issues for intake and discharges. For intakes, I don't think there's a mandate that specifies what kind of intake protections are required for desal plants. They kind of loosely follow power plants, but it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. There isn't really anything set in stone. But the main one is regarding discharge. So far field modeling is something that's pretty standard across the desalination plants around the world. Basically, if you're going to build a $1 billion plant, you want to make sure it's not going to like screw up the area that you're building in, right? Because it's going to cost more to fix it later. And that's a pretty standard thing to do around the world. But in Texas, we like to do things differently. We don't require that. Instead, we look at the first 300 feet, we figure out what the salinity crease is in there. And then beyond that, we just assume it's evenly mixed throughout the whole bay system. That's like kind of saying like, oh, the emissions from a refinery are evenly mixed across the airshed once it leaves the property line. And we know that's not true. We know people that live close to refineries have more asthma rates and more cancer rates. And it's the same thing with desalination. Whatever is close by is going to have higher
So much
salinity.
for the invitation to the meeting.
What's that?
Sorry, my bad.
Very good. And so basically what this does is we don't know what the actual impacts are going to be from this desalination plant. And so it incentivizes areas that are more environmentally risky because there's an economic cost and an environmental cost, but you're not really quantifying what that environmental cost is. So people are, you know, they want the cheapest option, so they tend to pick inshore versus offshore. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm gonna kick it back to Alita. Thanks for letting me chime in.
Yeah, so just for, you know, the Hillcrest site, the Inner Harbor, what they call Inner Harbor, just for these costs, up to 30 million gallons of water per day, $757 million build. We know that number is not true. $49 million yearly operations and maintenance. it's going to cost about $3,200 per acre foot of water, or $999.81 per 1,000 gallons. Water bills are going to increase $120 per year, as Jason had mentioned earlier. But what we don't see in these costs is the impacts. You know, here in this state, we are trying to address the issue with water, where in 2021, we were trying to address the issue with the energy grid. And we still have not solved that issue at this moment with our electrical grid. And desalination requires massive amounts of electricity. So we're just compounding our issues in this state without really addressing what needs to be addressed. We need to look at our water infrastructure, because most places, before they decided on desalination, they fixed their water infrastructure. They, you know, did their best to do that. They implemented conservation efforts. And then desalination was that final piece. For TCEQ, they do not look at the cumulative impacts of desalination. So they don't look at what gets exposed, what gets emitted through these refineries, what goes up, comes back down into the water. We also aren't sure if that water is going to be, you know, really potable for our communities and safe to drink, because they haven't tested what's in our water. So that, you know, it's just a multitude of issues that come with this project. So we are going to be, you know, then stressing our grid even more as they decide to bring on more, you know, data centers, crypto mining facilities, all of these things, you know, that they want to bring into the state so that they could continue this quote unquote Texas miracle, are actually going to, you know, get us more into this Texas nightmare. So what can y'all do? There are some calls to action. Today is the deadline for a comment for the new United States Army Corps of Engineers. They are trying to build an additional pipeline from the desalination plant to the water treatment center. So this will, you know, go and comment on there. Ask them to conduct a public hearing. We need the United States Army Corps of Engineers to also conduct a full environmental impact statement. And we also need to have them like stop this madness and stop this permit. So there's a QR code here that will take you to that notice. You sort by Texas. And then these are the, you know, numbers here, SWG 2014-00850-RCC. And then it should populate it with that, that permit number, and put your comments on there. We also, this Thursday, there is the TCEQ meeting. So if you are in the Austin area, we are asking for community members to at least show up and support Hillcrest. So it is item number 4 on the agenda. The meeting starts at 9:30. It's best to get there about 9 o'clock, maybe even earlier to get a seat. This will probably be heard by 10 o'clock. And if you can, stick around to offer a comment. If not, submit a comment to the TCEQ commissioners. We also are offering other trainings, you know, not just on desalination, but on how to like offer public comment, how to organize, how to do all that, so that we can stop this build out of these refineries and facilities that are large volume water users in our communities. And, you know, it's time to take action. So the state of Texas may not have power, but we citizens do. So here is my information. You can contact me at ecastillo@lcv.org. Get our bit.ly links. Like I said, we're going to have some trainings on there. And if you want to hear more stories from the Hillcrest residents, go to our Instagram at Chispa, Texas, and you can hear from community members who ask the city to stop with this project, especially in their neighborhood. Because even though they say Hillcrest is no longer a neighborhood, it very much is a neighborhood, and the people there deserve to be respected. Check.
Well, thank you so much. That was a great presentation, very informative, definitely lots of information. It is concerning just knowing how it impacts communities, while legislators like Charles Perry openly said that seawater desalination science is settled. We can dive into full-scale seawater desal, we know what we're doing. So I will let you with let you be with that. And we opening the floor for any questions you might have. I also have calls to action for you, but I'll save it for later. Let's maybe discuss some questions. Do we have any questions? Oh, feel free to unmute to ask your question.
I wanted to call on, I got a chat from Molly who was saying, I believe they're proposing a similar project in the Rio Grande Valley. Is that correct, Molly? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, they are, there was in the Port Isabel SPI press, there was a big picture of the guy down there, Gonzalez, or Gallegos, the representative, the US representative, and he had a big check. And there was, hang on a second. There, like they had one of those giant checks and it said, here, we're getting this money to start this along the way. They are going to be having a referendum though. So I don't know what kind of grant writing is going, if this was a grant for one part of it and they are going to have a referendum. I just saw that in the local newspaper down there. So definitely something to find out when this referendum is going to be. I'm assuming fairly soon in one of the elections that are coming up.
Yeah. November, I believe, Evgenia, maybe you can speak to that before we open more questions.
Yes, so one of the or two of the facilities were proposed in the Rio Grande Valley based on what I saw last time. So I haven't looked into more details though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can
Well,
I find out what was in the newspaper.
yeah.
That article.
So these the House Joint Resolutions authorize constitutionally money, public dollars to go towards these projects. Those would have to be approved by voters, right? So last election,
Okay.
we voted for the Texas Energy Fund, which was public dollars to go for gas plants and microgrids. Well, energy companies got their way, it all went to gas plants. And so that would come up again this next election cycle.
He also voted on the Texas Water Fund, Dave.
Yeah, we should get into that too.
Yeah. So on that, it was, people thought it was to find alternative sources or help infrastructure. And whenever I flagged that, look, industry, the Texas Chemistry Council, the Texas, Desalination Association, look at all the people who are backing this legislation. And that'll give you an indication of like who is, actually going to benefit from this. And they totally ignored me flagging that for them. And now look where we are with desal. And I know like with these projects, like Senator Perry did talk about this Corpus Christi plant being like a flagship, like they wanted to model this and get all the water from the coast so that they could pipe it over to Central Texas and West Texas. And then they could also bring like fracked water here so that we can process. And it was just like a really terrible exchange rather than addressing like the real issue of why we are in this situation. And I think
And I just shared the report that was published by Water Development Board last year on seawater desalination. It has probably the most updated information on the number of projects that we're talking about and all of those things. Linda, do you have a question?
Yeah. Okay, so if we submit a comment, we want to demand that they have a public meeting, but how do I need to say it matters to me, even though I'm not in the Corpus area, because I don't know.
Yeah, you're still a concerned citizen, and given that you're a taxpayer, it matters to you, yes. So here's your case. And you don't have to be in Corpus Christi area. In fact, at some point we ran just a 3-day action alert to gather support for essentially support for the opposition to Inner Harbor plant, and we had 50% of our responders, about, I don't remember, 90 people responded from the Dallas-Fort Worth area and San Antonio. They're not even around, but people are concerned. But those numbers were great to see, because you could see that even though you're not in Corpus, you're not alone who is concerned. No, but still not right there. So TCQ has a definition of affected person, and the affected person are those who are immediately affected by the construction of the plant. And I would say that Hillcrest residents are affected persons, but it looks like the City of Corpus Christi attorneys are dismissing their concerns, at least in their response. I don't know, Alida, have you looked through the responses from the attorneys? Yeah. So they requested the contested case hearing based on being directly affected. So we'll see on Thursday whether it'll be granted. And if you'd like to provide your feedback, if you'd like to come and join virtually on the 13th, please do so. It's important.
Yeah.
And
Craig's got a question.
Yeah, I have read recently about new technology in desalination. And some of this has been, using solar. I mean, it still presents the problem with what you do with the brine. But there is some real interesting new technology in desalination that would make it a lot less environmental damaging. Question is this going to have any impact on the plans they're doing now? It doesn't seem like it. But do you know if that's even a viable thing to bring up or to push for?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think if we kept pushing back desalination and looked at more affordable options like groundwater, conservation, reuse, and stuff like that, it would give us the opportunity to implement new developing technologies that are less environmentally damaging. But I think as far as like newer novel technologies, a lot of the people that make decisions around what water projects are pursued, they don't like to consider those until someone else has kind of, vetted it out.
And just to add to that, I mean, just in our area, like all of the renewable energy projects are being slated for industry. So we have an 800,000 panel solar farm outside of my community, and all of the energy that's produced from there goes to the plastics facility, Gulf Coast Growth Ventures, and it provides them with 40% of their water. The Port of Corpus Christi is proposing to build a solar farm, and that is to, bring in some of these ammonia plants / hydrogen plants that want to site here in the community. You have Citgo, who's building a solar farm to provide 30% of their energy. So if we had used energy, in ways that will benefit our community, it would maybe be something different. And if desalination were that, we were at that point where we needed water for our survival and not to continue with this farce of the Texas miracle, maybe like I would also consider that. But we all know, like, as soon as the water, like this water these projects haven't even been built out, and the water has basically already been sold. We also have this project, that with the Harbor Island plant, that the Nueces River Authority is trying to get built, and they're trying to start it off at 100 million gallons of water per day, and they want to scale it up to 450 million gallons of water per day by 2070. And most of that's going to go to Region L. We live in Region N, but it will be they want to send it to Region L for fracking. So they want to send it through pipeline, Central and West Texas. And so it's like, if we had made wiser decisions with our water, it would be something to consider. But, the state, we create these water plans, but nobody adheres to them. So I think we need to be better about that.
So let me call in. Evgenia has worked on this great quote that I put in the chat. Right now, Texans are losing 51 to 55 gallons of water per service connection every day just due to leaky infrastructure. That's pipes and transmission services that are leaking and broken. That's water that's already been treated, transported, but never made it to where it's needed. And that's enough water to meet the annual water needs of El Paso, Fort Worth, Austin, Lubbock, and Laredo combined, right? So much like on the energy side, where we're falling fast. We're lower than 30th in terms of energy conservation in the country. We used to be number one. We're falling lower. Instead, the governor wants to build more power plants. It's not to keep your lights on, it's to power artificial intelligence data centers and cryptocurrency mining. They want to build more water infrastructure, to use more energy, to risk the ecological health of our bays and estuaries when we're ignoring solutions on the table that are affordable, that would put a lot of people to work. And we have to ask why. More importantly, we have to get out and speak out against these kinds of things. And I think Evgenia has some information about how you all can do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I can share that. What I was trying to do is pull up the Texas Water Code just to show you the extent of you're not seeing the right screen, right? Just a second. Just to show you the extent of water quality standards for salinity in Texas. They're close to non-existent because, sorry, having some technical issues as always with sharing. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Are you
They're
talking, or I was, while you, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Kenya.
problem.
While you look for your slide, that's another issue that we're facing here in the community is increasing salinity of our bays because of evaporation. And the hotter that our temperatures get, the more evaporation we're experiencing in our communities. And yeah, y'all are so right with fixing our leaky infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you. And seawater desalination is dangerous. What I was trying to say before I got distracted is that the salinity standards is so weak in Texas. It just basically says that salinity levels must be maintained to support the aquatic uses. But like, how do you enforce that? How do you implement that? And this is all unknown. This is like really, really important, regulatory oversight. We cannot proceed with large scale desalination. We're risking a lot, at least at this point. Okay, so I prepared a whole list of action items for you, which I hope you can see because screen sharing
yeah.
apparently is not my talent.
Oh.
So, first we talked about the meeting on March 13th, this Thursday. Attend if you can. Express your concerns if you can. The details can be found in chat, as far as the location and agenda. Then there's also another important meeting, very relevant to what we're talking about today. It's the Surface Water Quality Standards Advisory Work Group meeting. That's a work group within TCEQ, their water quality program, and they meet on March 27th. Because remember what TCEQ is doing right now? They're revising surface water quality standards in Texas. They started the process back last June or July, and it'll keep going through this year. And then hopefully sometime at the beginning of next year, we'll see updated water quality standards. But salinity standards, like I just talked about, that's the relevant topic to bring up here. And I reached out specifically to the director of this group and I asked, will people have the space to ask salinity questions? Because Jason knows it's been really hard to get those in other TCQ meetings. Yes, there will be space, so come with difficult questions and ask TCEQ. And again, the details of the meeting are in chat. If you're concerned about produced water that we talked about last time, come and ask about produced water. Anything that's related to surface water quality standards, that is your time, and you can attend virtually and online as well. And if you need any help wording your questions or anything, just feel free to reach out to me at any time. Then we have the Sierra Club. We have the current petition, which would, if you sign it, it would let you inform TCQ that you are concerned about our water quality standards that are not protective enough. So you're concerned about them, that TCQ needs to do a better job protecting our waters. And again, the petition link is in the chat. So we will gather your comments. If you sign the petition and leave your personal message, we will get that message and attach it to our final comments to surface water quality standards, which will probably be, I think, in August based on the TCQ's timeline related to that. So feel free to leave a personal message. In fact, you're encouraged to do that. Then you can also reach out to your legislators and share your concerns with your legislators. Stop by in person, give a call. We developed several fact sheets. In the chat, there is a link to our Legislative Action Center, and it has several fact sheets that can equip you to talk to your legislator. And one of the newest one is on seawater desalination that was posted just a couple of days ago. So feel free to print it out and use it as well. And of course, join our committee, Water for People, and the Environment Committee. We'll continue our water conversations. It's a very important issue for Texas. Water is very important. We cannot live without it. So we definitely need to work together on better solutions for water. And the link to join our committee is also in chat. We meet every second Monday of each month. So feel free to hop on to our calls. And finally, the Sierra Club Advocacy Lobby Day is coming up on March 24th. We're all very excited about it. It's an in-person event. We're going to be in Austin visiting legislative offices, socializing, and building power. So please consider joining. If you need additional information, the link is in chat. And if you have any questions, like I think there is carpooling arranged and other things, we can answer that as well. Just feel free to reach out. And those are probably all updates that I have. Any questions that you may have?
Yeah, how exhausted are you after all this hard work, Evgenia? Yeah,
Well, it's almost 7:20, almost
there
bedtime.
you go.
I'll make
I just
it.
want to say thank you to you, Jason, and Alita in the Water for People in the Environment Committee for putting on, honestly, 3 of the best like presentations I've been part of in the last few months. I've learned so much from you all. I just want to say thanks. And folks, I'd love to send a picture to Representative Morales Shaw, who filed the Salinity Standards Bill, HB 3728, that's mentioned in the notes. If you feel like coming on camera, I can do a little group photo here and take a shot so we can let her know that we're grateful and that we're behind this bill. So feel free to turn on your cameras. I promise y'all look as weird as I do after a full day. Okay. All right. So here we go. Picture time. 1, 2, 3. All right. We'll send it in the follow-up too. Okay.
Thank you. That was a
Back to
great
you, Evgenia.
idea. Yeah, awesome. Great idea. I'm not that creative at this time. Thank you for that. Any questions? I see some comments in the chat. If you have any questions, just feel free to unmute.
Adios. I got a jet. Thank you all very much. I so appreciate being a part of this.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here,
Keep
Roy.
up the good work, please.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you, Roy. Okay, fantastic. If we don't have any more questions, then expect a follow-up email from me as always. I know during these meetings we share tons of links. So I want them all to be available to you even after the meeting. So I send my follow-up emails. So expect that. It'll be very long. The recording of the meeting will be also shared along with the passcode. And please feel free to reach out, as I said many times already, and help us spread the word about what we do here as the Water for People and the Environment Committee, because we want to grow our impact. We want to engage more Texans in water advocacy. And thank you so much, Jason and Alita. Beautiful presentation, great points. And I see lots of thanks in chat. So enjoy this beautiful weather, and we'll see you on April 14th. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Have a good evening.
Yeah.